The prison encounter. The prison gate slammed shut with a resounding clang, the sound echoing down the dark metallic corridors of the Xanther warship. Dax Harland stumbled forward, his hands bound with alien energy cuffs that sparked with every step. Two insectoid guards, their elongated bodies glinting in the dim light, pushed him into a cavernous cell. The cruel commander stood outside the bars, his multifaceted eyes reflecting dark amusement. "You think you're special, human," he hissed, his voice like grinding metal. "But here you're nothing. Let's see how special you feel when Meloth finishes with you." Dax straightened, his piercing green eyes meeting the commander's gaze. "Meloth, huh?" he said, his voice calm despite the circumstances. "That's supposed to scare me?" The commander's mandibles clicked in delight. "Oh, it will. Meloth has torn through warriors twice your size. You'll just be another meal." The guards shoved Dax into the cell, the energy cuffs disengaging as the door sealed behind him. The lights dimmed, leaving the room in near total darkness save for the faint red glow of energy barriers. The air was thick and hot, carrying a metallic tang that made Dax's skin prickle. Then he heard it, a deep, guttural growl that reverberated through the cell. He turned slowly, his sharp instincts kicking in. From the shadows emerged a pair of glowing amber eyes, accompanied by the sound of claws scraping against the floor. "Ah," Dax murmured, his lips curling into a small smirk. "You must be Meloth." The creature stepped into the faint light, its massive form dominating the space. Meloth was a dragon-like beast, its scales shimmering like molten metal and its wings folded tightly against its body. Its snout curled into a snarl, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. It exhaled, the heat of its breath making the air shimmer. Most prisoners would have frozen in fear, but Dax simply tilted his head, his eyes narrowing. "You're big," he said, his tone almost conversational. "But I've dealt with worse." Meloth growled again, its tail lashing against the floor. It took a step forward, its claws leaving deep gouges in the metal beneath them. Dax didn't flinch. He clenched his fists, his muscles tensing, every fiber of his being ready for what came next. The first battle. The dragon lunged. Meloth's attack was swift, its claws slicing through the air with lethal precision. Dax dodged to the side, rolling across the ground as the beast's talons narrowly missed him. He came up on his feet in one fluid motion, his eyes scanning the creature for weaknesses. The dragon roared, its wings spreading wide as it charged again. Dax darted forward, slipping beneath the massive beast's body and landing a solid punch to its side. His knuckles connected with scales, sending a shockwave through his arm. "Tough hide," he muttered, shaking out his hand. Meloth spun, its tail sweeping toward him like a battering ram. This time Dax couldn't dodge in time. The tail struck him in the ribs, sending him crashing into the cell wall. Pain exploded through his body, but he gritted his teeth and pushed himself up. "You hit hard," he said, his voice strained but steady. "Good. So do I." Meloth lunged again, its jaws snapping inches from Dax's face. He ducked, grabbing one of its horns and using the momentum to swing himself onto its back. The beast roared in fury, thrashing wildly, trying to shake him off. Dax held on, his legs locking around its neck as he leaned down to its ear. "I don't want to fight you," he said, his voice low but firm. "But if you keep pushing, I'll show you why they call me the real monster." Meloth froze for a moment, its glowing eyes flicking toward him. It growled, a low, guttural sound that was less rage and more curiosity. Dax released his grip, sliding off the dragon's back and landing lightly on the ground. He held up his hands, palms open, a gesture of peace. "We're both prisoners here," he said. "They want us to tear each other apart for their entertainment. But we don't have to play their game." Meloth's head tilted slightly, its growl fading into silence. For a creature bred for destruction, its gaze was sharp, almost intelligent. It took a cautious step back, its wings folding against its body. Dax smirked, wiping a trickle of blood from the corner of his mouth. That's more like it, he said. Now let's figure out how to get out of this place together. In the shadows of the cell, man and beast regarded each other, an unspoken understanding forming between them. Neither of them was here by choice, and neither of them would survive alone. For the first time in its life, the dragon didn't see prey, it saw an equal. The unlikely alliance. The tension in the cell was palpable, the kind that seeped into your bones and made your heart beat just a little faster. Meloth stood motionless, its massive form blocking out the faint red glow of the energy barriers. Its amber eyes remained fixed on Dax, who stood unarmed but unflinching, his sharp gaze matching the dragon's intensity. For a moment, neither moved. The silence was broken only by the faint hum of the prison's power grid and the occasional scrape of Meloth's claws against the metal floor. Dax tilted his head slightly, breaking the standoff. So, he said, his voice calm but carrying a weight of authority, we can keep this up, or we can figure a way out of here. Your call. The dragon growled softly, its molten gaze narrowing. Its tail flicked once, the motion sharp and deliberate, as if testing Dax's reaction. He didn't flinch. Instead, he took a careful step forward, keeping his hands in plain sight. You don't want to be here any more than I do, Dax continued. I'm guessing you've been stuck in this pit long enough to know how this works. They want us to fight, to tear each other apart so they can watch and laugh. But I don't think you're interested in giving them what they want. Meloth tilted its head, a low rumble vibrating through the cell. It wasn't a snarl, though, it was something deeper, more thoughtful. The dragon lowered its massive head slightly, bringing its eyes level with Dax's. The gesture was deliberate, not a show of submission, but a sign of curiosity. Dax raised an eyebrow. You're smarter than they give you credit for, aren't you? He crouched slowly, picking up a shard of metal from the ground. Let me test a theory. The dragon watched intently as Dax began to scratch a crude diagram into the floor. He drew the layout of the cell block as he remembered it, marking the locations of guards and the energy grid controls. Here's the deal, he said, pointing to a section of the drawing. The barriers are powered from this control hub. If we take it out, the field drops. After that, it's a straight shot to the hangar. Meloth let out a low rumble, leaning closer to the drawing. Its massive claw extended slowly, tapping the area Dax had indicated for the power hub. The motion was precise, deliberate. Dax grinned. I knew it. You're not just a monster, you're thinking this through. The dragon straightened, its glowing eyes locked on Dax. There was no growl this time, only silence, a silent agreement between two beings who understood each other in ways their captors never could. The next step was trust, a rare commodity in a place designed to strip away hope. The Great Escape. Dax stood near the far wall of the cell, his sharp eyes fixed on the energy barrier. The faint hum of the power grid filled the air, a reminder of their ever-present surveillance. Meloth paced behind him, its movement slow but deliberate, its claws clicking softly against the floor. Dax turned, his voice low but firm. If we're doing this, I need to know you're all in. I can't have you second-guessing me out there. Meloth rumbled, the sound deep and resonant. It stepped closer, lowering its head until its massive snout was mere inches from Dax's face. He held his ground, his heart pounding but his expression calm. Good, Dax said softly. He reached out, his hand hovering near the dragon's jaw before finally resting against its scales. The heat was intense but not unbearable, and the texture was smoother than he'd expected. We're in this together then. The dragon let out a huff of warm air, its wings twitching slightly. It turned toward the energy barrier, its gaze sharp and focused. Dax followed its line of sight, his mind racing through the details of their plan. The first test came when a guard passed by, his armor gleaming under the dim lights. Dax motioned for Meloth to stay back, crouching low as the guard paused near their cell. With a flick of his wrist, Dax hurled the shard of metal he'd kept hidden. The improvised projectile struck the control panel on the guard's wrist, shorting out the energy barrier. The guard barely had time to react before Meloth lunged. The dragon's claws struck with precision, pinning the guard to the floor without killing him. Dax stepped forward, pulling the guard's access key from his belt. "Nice work," he said, glancing at Meloth. The dragon rumbled in response, its molten eyes gleaming with approval. With the barrier down, they moved quickly. Dax led the way, using his intimate knowledge of combat tactics to navigate the prison's labyrinthine corridors. Meloth followed closely, its massive frame surprisingly quiet as it moved with deliberate precision. They reached the power hub without incident, the faint hum of the grid growing louder as they approached. Dax stopped, motioning for Meloth to stay hidden. "This is it," he whispered, pointing to the console. "Take it out, and the barriers drop." Meloth didn't hesitate. The dragon stepped forward, its claws striking the console with surgical precision. Sparks flew as the grid overloaded, the lights flickering before plunging the prison into darkness. The alarm sounded moments later, but it was too late. Dax and Meloth were already moving, their path illuminated by the faint glow of emergency lights. Together, they were an unstoppable force, man and beast united against a common enemy. As they barreled through the hangar doors, the faint light of stars beyond the prison ship filled the space. Dax turned to Meloth, his grin sharp and determined. "Ready to fly?" The dragon roared, its wings unfurling as they prepared for the final stretch of their escape. For the first time, they weren't just prisoners, they were a team, and the galaxy had no idea what was coming next. Freedom and brotherhood. Dax and Meloth crouched in the shadows of the massive hangar bay, the flickering emergency lights casting long, jagged shadows on the walls. The alarms blared overhead, echoing through the cavernous space, but the chaos worked in their favor. Guards rushed in every direction, disorganized and panicked by the sudden power outage. Dax surveyed the scene. The hangar was packed with ships of all sizes, from small fighter crafts to massive troop carriers. He pointed to a sleek, agile interceptor near the far wall. "That one," he whispered to Meloth. "Fast enough to outrun their pursuit ships, but big enough for both of us." The dragon's eyes followed his gesture, then rumbled in agreement. Together, they moved through the shadows, avoiding the scattered patrols. When they reached the ship, Dax quickly accessed the controls using the stolen key card while Meloth stood guard, its keen senses alert for any approaching threats. The ship's engines hummed to life just as a squad of guards spotted them. Laser fire erupted across the hangar, but Meloth's roar sent them scrambling for cover. The dragon's wings spread wide as it leaped onto the ship's loading ramp, following Dax into the cockpit. "Hold on," Dax shouted over the engine noise, his hands flying over the controls. The ship lurched forward, bursting through the hangar's force field and into the star-filled void of space. Behind them, the prison ship's pursuit craft gave chase, their weapons blazing. But Dax was an experienced pilot, and with Meloth's keen eyesight spotting incoming attacks, they weaved through the hostile fire like dancers in a deadly ballet. As they broke free from the ship's gravity well, Dax set course for a nearby nebula where they could lose their pursuers. In the calm that followed, he turned to look at his unlikely companion. Meloth had curled up in the ship's cargo hold, its massive form somehow fitting perfectly in the space. "You know," Dax said, leaning against the doorway, "I never thought I'd be traveling the galaxy with a dragon for a partner." Meloth's amber eyes opened, regarding him with what could only be described as amusement. The great beast let out a soft rumble, not threatening, but almost friendly. Months later, stories would spread across the outer rim territories of a mysterious duo, a human warrior and his dragon companion, liberating prisoners from alien ships and striking fear into the hearts of slavers and tyrants. They called them the Shadow and the Flame, though their real names were known only to each other. In the quiet moments between their adventures, Dax would often think back to that first night in the prison cell. The aliens had thrown him to what they thought was certain death, expecting entertainment from his demise. Instead, they had inadvertently created something far more dangerous than either of them alone, an unbreakable bond between two souls who refused to be caged. As their ship sailed through the cosmic winds toward their next destination, Dax smiled. Sometimes the best partnerships came from the most unexpected places. "Ready for the next adventure, old friend?" he asked. Meloth's roar echoed through the ship, a sound of joy, freedom, and eternal friendship. The end.